It's a little boat. Okay, it's a little boat. It's a boat on the ocean. With a little man. And a little man to it. Do we need the sun? That's a question. It's the basics. It'll do. Paint time.
That's right, today we are going to dive in and we're going to discuss perspective. Perspective being one of the core principles of creating art in any way, shape or form. We're going to do it in a few parts. We're going to go through conceptual notions of perspective, technical notions of perspective, and then knowing all those things, we're going to see what we can do with that. So why is perspective important? Well, perspective is important and classed as one of the fundamental values of the art world because it is all about your view of the work which you are perceiving, which is a pretty simple notion when you think about it. And it begins even before the artist has presented you with the image, because as an audience member you are presenting a level of perspective to any work you encounter, and an artist is presenting their perspective via the work that they create. So even if you ignore all of the technical stuff about 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, foreshortening, arm shortening, life shortening, all of those things, you are still in the grip of trying to perceive. And that's why it's pretty core and fundamental to engage with the world around you. So as an audience member, you are bringing your own baggage, your own luggage to the work in front of you, and as an artist, I bring my own baggage and own luggage, because we've had our own lives, we've had our own intrinsic moments which have all led us to this one path, and it's going to have more value in some ways to some people and some values to other people. The best way I can put it is if you as a person have had a pet dog in your lifetime, and I paint a picture of a very nice pet dog, a good boy, etc., and I put it on a wall, people who have had pets and have had animals within their lives are going to look at it and they're going to have slightly more emotional connection, and they're going to perceive it. They're going to know what it takes to take care of a dog. They're going to know what it takes to just involve that within your life, whereas someone who's never had a pet isn't. But they're going to have a whole different view. They're going to have a yearning. They're going to have this want and this need, or maybe they'll have a derivative view of it. Maybe they'll look at it and think, no, I hate dogs. I want to get them out of my life. Why is this guy taking time to paint a picture of it? Well, frankly, it's none of your business. So let's move on, shall we? A lot of perspective is measured in what you can see, but also what you can't see. The whole idea of perspective is that you're creating an illusion of depth to the work you create. It's what takes it from being a stick figure to being a stick figure sitting on a settee. It's what takes it from a picture of a house to a house on a cul-de-sac with neighbors and rental problems and housing associations. It's all of those things. It's tricking the mind into filling in the blanks, as it were, in order to render a more viable product of the world around you. It's all the little notions that you put into work, as much as it's the angles and shape of things within the image itself. It's also just the little suspension of disbelief that this is just a picture on a page. Nobody looks at the pictures of dogs playing cards and says, that's some dogs playing cards, that's an illustration of dogs playing cards. No, they look at it and they think there's personality there. They think there's rationale to it there. They're wondering how the dogs got there in the first place. Are they holding the cards in their paws? Are they just stuck to them? Who posed these dogs? Did these dogs exist? But as human beings, we look at things and we fill in the gaps because we're problem solvers. You may not think of yourself as a logical person or as a problem solving person. You may feel overwhelmed in most things in life, in your brain. And now we're going to do that with artwork because, why wouldn't? Maybe you're just starting out on your artistic journey. Maybe you aren't even considering yourself an artist. Maybe you just want to learn a technique and learn some basics on how to do things. Well, here's you over to there. Because you may just be trying to render some level of reality from the things around you, or you want to make a realistic rendition of something on your street, your home, and learning a technical basics on how to do that can be very helpful. So with that said, let's learn some basics on perspective drawing.
Now, I'm not going to go into crazy detail on perspective drawing or technical drawing. I found a great video on how to do that, which I will link in the description below and probably put up on screen. There's a great video by Stephen Travers which goes into 1, 2, and 3-point perspective, which I think you should all check out if you want to know more about the technical side of this. I'm going to teach you the basics just now of how to do 1-point and 2-point perspective. So, there are 3 aspects to perspective. There is the horizon line, which is the view and is considered the eye level of the drawing. It is how you're viewing the image as a whole in a shape. Let's draw a little I was going to say square, but rectangle around here. It is how you're approaching the image, and it is where your eye level is in comparison to the objects around you, right? That's as simple as that needs to be. That's a horizon line. I might even put a little horizon line there, okay? And then there are points on the horizon line, which we'll mark with a little cross, and these are vanishing points. That's the long and short on the technical terminology you need in order to create perspective and thus create the illusion of depth on a technical point of view to your image. So, horizon line, vanishing point. I'm going to split this into 2 because I'm going to fit it all onto one page. So ignore this little line here. He's just a divider, It's just there to create some conflict, like most news outlets. 1-point perspective. 1-point perspective works by having a single vanishing point. Vanishing point, quite simple, it's on the horizon line. And this is where all things are going within the image. All direction of the image should be led to that. And the whole idea is that if you were to draw a cube being the most basic item, which you can draw in the world of art, next to the cylinder, if you were to draw a cube and it's on the horizon line, it would look 2D. It would look like that. It means that it's on eye level with you, and you can see it just like that. Now, if it's above the horizon line, the whole idea is that it's above you. And if it's below the horizon line, it's below you. You are looking down on it, or are you looking up on it? So this is up, and this is down. Simple as. Which means if we draw the same square down here, we are all of a sudden above it. Which means we can see the top of it. And if we can see the top of it, it has a lid, like so, and a horizontal line comes across, and we have the lid. Now, because I've drawn this to the side, it means we can also see the side of it, which means we can draw the line down here, and of course, the back of it. We decide how long it is. The whole basics is that your vertical lines stay vertical, your horizontal lines stay horizontal, and everything else leads towards the vanishing point. Which means you can now render a 3D cube. Chances are you've probably already done this at some point. You've probably already sat there and doodled a cube and made it 3-point perspective. Doing this just allows you to create more complex scenes because it gives you guidelines. And I will say that whilst these are guidelines, it is not the be-all and end-all of create image. It's all about playing with that to create jarring images, to create fascinating images, create images which lead you around and take you on a journey. So for instance, we are also going to draw a cube up here. Little cube up there, and we again follow the basics, which is, we will put in a line here. I'm not going to draw all the way, I'm just going to draw the bits which I want, so I don't have to do any erasure. And like so, pop in that. And congratulations, now I have a floating cube. It's that simple, 1-point perspective, in a nutshell, drawn, drawn, and drawn. And we can pad this out, right? Any image can be padded out, and it's about applying that skill to the image which you want to create. One thing I will say is, regardless of learning technical details or anything like that, one of the most important tricks I can teach you as an artist, and it's not really a trick, it's just a way of approaching things, is decide what you want to draw first, okay? Because If you don't know what you want to draw first, and you decide, I'm going to sit down and I'm drawing, and I'm doing something, it's going to probably turn out something disappointing, because you had no expectation of it. You had no view of where you were going to go with it. Sure, some of that can be figuring out where you want to go, and doing some sketches, and doing some preliminaries, but you should decide what you want to draw before you jump in and try and draw a final piece. Otherwise, again, as I say, it will likely end up just kind of meandering. If you don't know what you're making when you're baking a cake, you're just throwing ingredients into a bowl, you end up ignoring some of the fundamentals which it would take to get to that image in the first place, and you just end up with a bowl of barely usable slop. Anyhow, so we can pad this image out. One of the most common one perspective views you will see, and I think Stephen covers in his video, is this, where you draw that, and you say, hey, this is the view of the world. We'll draw another line away from that, another line away from that. Congratulations, we have just built ourselves a wall, and another wall, and said, hey, this is a road. Now, one of the other rules, as you get closer to the horizon line, the objects which you create should get smaller, because they're further away from us. And as we said before, this is just a magic trick. This is illusion. This is tricking the viewer into seeing what you're trying to see. So as we get closer on this side, all these little bushes which we've just drawn here, these little blobs, they have to get smaller as they get closer to the horizon line. And likewise on the other side, and the road strips, they have to get closer, have to get smaller. And by doing that, you're giving the impression of how far away something is. Depth perception kicks in, your brain kicks in and goes, this is the distance, this is the rule, and this is the time. We can make this, we can add a little thing here. As we draw this down, we know this is the ground, so it has to stop at some point, and we say, hey, that's probably whereabouts it stops, because our brain fills in the gap and says, this is where this would stop. And all of a sudden, we have little man being abducted by the dangerous cube. The domineering cube, the geometric domineering cube, which is art's technical details, as they teach you all the technical details, but don't actually teach you how to create an engaging piece of artwork. Anywho, moving over to point 2. This is 1 point perspective. Okay, so 2 point perspective. Quite simple. You have 2 vanishing points. Shocking, I know. Who would have thought there'd be 2 points involved in 2 point perspective? And then, again, the rules are fairly simple. If you were to put a cube on the horizon line, we are looking directly onto it, because the horizon line is our viewpoint, it would be flat. That's if we were drawing a cube. If we were drawing something more complex, with sides where we could see it, we would be able to draw away from it and say that these points are going to the horizon line. And all of a sudden, we've given an impression of something which is much deeper than just a cube. It's no longer a cube, because if we were looking at it from top down, it would have angled sides. But we've given the perspective, and we've said, hey, 2 point perspective, there's a oddly shaped building at the end of the road. This is why most drawings you will see, most images you will see, obey 2 point perspective. For the most part, it is the most common style of drawing or rendering an image in any way, shape, or form. One of the reasons I won't go into 3 point perspective today is because 3 point perspective is rarely acted upon. It's more of an accidental feature of a lot of things. It's a trick a lot of beginner photographers use to make their images look more dynamic. It's achieved by shooting from very low angles and very high angles, which then warps the perspective of the object which you're looking at. It's why you see a lot of hipstery photographers really low to the ground, pointing upwards, because they're trying to get that 3 point perspective. They're trying to distort the image in camera, and I respect that. But at the same time, learn some other things, or photograph something more interesting than whatever you're photographing. Anyway, back to 2 point perspective. So 2 point perspective again. So let's say we take the same cube, which we had before. We're going to put him over here. It's not really a cube again. I'm drawing a lot of rectangles when I say cube. Quadrilaterals. Okay, so we have a little square over here. Same rules. We bring out the backs and sides. Back and side. Back and side. We draw up from here. And we say, hey, this is the shape we've created. It's not a cube anymore, right? Because you added another perspective to it. You added another line and said, this is no longer cubical. This is now a weird shape. Now if you wanted to draw a cube specifically, the best way to do that is from side-on view. Again, this is adding depth. It's adding something more interesting. It's taking it away from just being a box on a line and saying this should be more interesting. So, cube on a line, flat. Cube out here at an angle in the center. Again, vertical lines remain vertical. We build out the cube. We know where the baselines are. We know where the top lines are, because they have to obey the vanishing points we created. And then you simply add the depth to what you're creating. And you may be thinking, Graham, that makes no sense, because where do we put the backline? Well, you already know where the backline is, because you drew a vertical line. So you just join up the points, and where they intersect is where the back is, and you have a cube. Apologies for the interruption there, and apologies for the background noise. Moving on. And that's the simplest of it. That's the simplest of two-point perspective. And again, same rules. If it appears above the world, above the horizon line, you are looking at it from below. Therefore, the below needs to obey that. And all of a sudden you can see the base. And have a play with it. I suggest it's a good little technique and exercise to kind of, this pencil is ridiculous, little technique and kind of exercise to say, this is what we're creating. And you see what you can get away with, you know? A lot of art is trial and error. And that's fine. You wouldn't believe that this is the third time I've recorded this video. But there, we have a cube which is now above us, and let's say we wanted to make that cube ominous and threatening again. We would bore lines down here from the beam, which is coming from the ominous technical cube. And we would put that behind there, and we'd say this is where the ground is, this is where I want it to intersect. And all of a sudden, if we leave out the gaps there, we have someone being abducted in front of and behind a building. Maybe further up in this one, just so you can see him. But oh no, he's being abducted by ominous technical cube! It's that simple. Those are the basics. As I say with anything, technical skill is fine. It's something you should learn. It's core technique if you want to just render the reality around you. But you should always try and further explore that. You should always push that further and take these techniques and apply them to the things which you actually want to create. Get past just that view of, I can draw this, and I can draw this cube, I can draw this building, I can draw this person to an nth degree. I can basically re-render reality back onto the page. That's a skill. That's a skill, and that's a technique, and something I can't even do. I can't make photorealistic pictures. But what I can do is take something, apply concept to it, and make you feel something. And that's what we'll go to next. Now that we know the technical basic, now that we have a brief insight into the concept of perspective, we should see what we can do with that. But first, there's a message from our sponsors.
Fashion takes to the ice at New York's Rockefeller Center skating pond. Though Susan's technique leaves something to be desired,
Day 2. Give that a minute to cure. See where we end up next. Almost put that in my coffee. Handy clamp is handy. the blue skies in the middle. Okay. That'll work. That works well. Sand medium.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
How's it going?
Oh, you know, not great. How about you?
Me? Oh, well, I'm doing fine. Finally took some time out to see the twilight hours, walk through the fire of the morning, and whisk my senses into a tantalizing bisque of inertia, uncompared with this world.
You're lying.
How can you tell?
You blink when you lie.
So, why not great?
Can't seem to paint.
You're referring to that?
Yes.
Well,
That.
looks like a painting to me.
Very funny.
There was paint involved, I assume.
Shut up. You know what I mean.
So?
So?
What is it?
It's a boat on an ocean.
Boat on an ocean. May I guess?
Sure.
Boat. Singular. Yes. It's alone. It's got a passenger.
Yes.
Okay. It's about a man. Man's inescapable conflict of how to get the right bread to soup ratio, and how we'll never solve it.
What?
Well, if I said it was about mental health, you'd have had my buttons off.
Yes, I would, for sure, because it's not that. This is not meant to be that. It's just, it's too... Look, I liked the visual, okay? Right? I liked the visual. I liked the idea of a person at sea, on a boat, the tranquility of the view, the shoreline gone, and how that represents an omnipresent idea of us all looking for some visibility of stability. For this person, this being, is stable.
Sure.
Has stability. Sure, they're on a boat, but they're fine. They're at sea. They're in a boat. The boat is a tool. The tool helps them float. Helps them move. Helps them fish. Helps them live. Otherwise they might drown.
Painted a man in a boat.
Yes, it's a man in a boat.
Is there chance, and this is just me floating the idea, that you're too close to it? So, the problem is, you know what you wanted to paint.
What the hell are you talking about?
You wanted to paint a man in a boat because you started with that idea.
Yes.
Right, so one way or another, you're going to end up with a little chap, Colin, named him Colin without asking, just doing it, sitting on his Todd, in a boat, and it's going to give you the feeling, and you know everyone's going to get it, dark painting of a man in a boat, sad, lonesome, perhaps a little peckish.
The man?
What? No, me.
Huh.
When in reality, the visual is what you wanted, but not that feeling. Whatever feeling you wanted or have is not expressed by this. And thus, you're unable to gravitate the catharsis you feel when creating and want others to feel.
So what's the solution? Paint over column?
You dare. Just sit with it a little. Try some bits. Remember, when making art, it's not about successfully painting a sad clown when you're feeling blue. It's about expanding past the visual perspective and adding or removing elements which give a viewer something more than just a man in a boat. Giving them whatever you were so desperate to convey that when you lost sight of it, you ended up with quite a pathetic painting of a man in a boat. Your work can look like whatever it wants, but if it has no feeling, what's the point? You've done this. Now do what's needed. You got it? You got that?
Documenting the process, day. Yeah, whatever. So I think I figured out what the problem is. Problem is I get to this stage every single time and then find I'm not ready for it. Or I start to feel anxious about it because I have a very clear visual in my mind I want to make. I just don't know how I'm going to get there. But he's right. Shouldn't be doing this on looks, should be doing this on feel. So let's feel this. All right? Day 4, I guess. Still documenting the process. Let's try. Good. Just don't like this bit. Alright, fuck it. Okay, stock take. Where are we at? I hate it. That's where we're at. Remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint, but doesn't take into account that you might want to quit a marathon halfway through. So, what are we going to do about it? That's the real question. Documenting the process once again. I feel like we need to destroy some of this. But here we go. Let's do what we can. When in doubt, paint it black. Stop tick time. Okay. Time to protect. Take stock a little bit. I think it's very easy when making something, making anything, especially over an extended period of time, to lose sight. And I think you have to take some time within that process to consider where your original intention was. I think it's what stops a lot of people creating. Because as much as this has been a challenge, as much as this has been a struggle at times, it's been fun. It's what makes me feel, for lack of a better term, alive. It's what I get enjoyment from, because much like anything which involves a level of struggle, you get to come out the other side and say, hey, I struggled, but I got there in the end because I kept going. And creation's unique in that sense, because it's not a level of physical exertion, it's mental exertion. It's paying attention to what you're doing, it's trying to keep all the cogs in motion at the same time. It's not letting yourself get trapped in the noise which is creation. At least that's my view on it. This is a good stage to take stock. And just consider what we've done, where we are, where our eyes are on the horizon. There's a truth to say that artists become precious of the work they're making, because you get it to a point where you're like, that works, that's good, that's how I want it to look, we're on the right route. And then changing it or taking a dramatic step away from it suddenly becomes way more of a challenge. Because you're no longer fighting against something you don't like. You're trying to build upon the success you already had, and in doing so, have a risk. There's more of a risk. There's a lot of risk in working on a piece which you have in a good position compared to a blank sheet of paper, something you dislike, at least for people who create. That's why I encourage everybody to create. It teaches you to look at your life around you and consider what does and doesn't work. And if there is something you want next, understand that there is a risk. But also understand that if you got it to the right place in the first place, you can definitely do it again. It's probably why I like work which is somewhat incidental. Right? Like, I make work which would be hard to reproduce manually. I'm sure someone could take a 3D scan, get it to where they want it to be, but for a human being to sit down and recreate this would be difficult. It's essentially a one-shot. And that's why I like that work. Because I'm aware that whilst I would struggle to recreate it, others would definitely not. Even though I documented this process. Even though I took the time out to record it, to set it up. Okay? And I think that applies to life as well. The classic artist line is, there are no mistakes, they're just happy accidents. Maybe I feel inclined to disagree. I think there are no accidents. And I'm not saying the creation of work is fate or the creation of work is predestined. I just think we apply meaning to the things which we do anyway. We sit down and we say, this is my intent, and even when we find something which seems incidental or accidental, we still apply intent to that. So there are no accidents. There's just artwork which hasn't been labeled as art yet. That's a much bigger conversation. Not one we're going to solve today. Is it? Dry, please. So, what do we learn? I think it's important whenever you complete a piece of work to take a step back from it, to think about it in a broader sense. What do we learn from doing this? How would we do it again? Were the mistakes made? And I'm not saying you have to correct those mistakes. I'm just saying it's a possibility to learn and grow, as with anything in life. I think we look at life in the context of needing to move forward and only following opportunities which allow you to move forward. And when life doesn't provide those opportunities, it seems like everything's against you. It seems like you're destined for failure. And maybe stops you exploring things which you may end up enjoying. If life was nothing but good things, it would be redundant. It would be a process which could be finished in a few months and would result in bored and docile people. But when life provides you with some challenge, you get the opportunity to experience other things. And I think that's an important distinction as well, is challenge yourself. Don't challenge other people. It's up to a person whether they want to step out of their comfort zone. It's up to a person if they want to move through what they're going through. You can point them to the direction, but you can't force them through it. When I make anything, I go through the same cycle, time and again, which is something which I learned very early on as an artist. And that's that this is not a quick process. It's never meant to be a quick process. It's meant to be something you put time and thought into, so you don't end up creating things which are vapid and lacking. It's meant to be considered, and even if the initial creation is intense and chaotic, there's always a moment of reflection afterwards, before, during. It's not always easy. It's not always hard. But that's why we do it. There are moments in this which felt like they were going wrong. Probably never be happy with the finished piece. And that's not perfectionism. That's satisfactionism. It's less about creating perfectly what was in my brain when I had the initial thought. It was more about the feelings it gave me along the way, the emotions I engaged with, and whether it lived up to that expectation. So that when I do get to this stage, and I give it a couple of days, and I think about what I achieved and how I got to this point, that I don't feel like the time was wasted, and I didn't just recreate what I created before, and I didn't feel like it hadn't provided me with what I wanted when I began. If we took just note of the practical things we learned, just the things which went wrong. We learned the filler I used to create texture wasn't waterproof. And I wouldn't buy it again, but I do have another tub of it to use. I learned some of the paints I bought didn't react how I thought they would. Not all paint's created equal, but I'm willing to give paint a chance. Especially when the price point's right. I learned documenting this process was more work than I expected. But I also enjoyed the challenge. Made me think about what I was doing. Made me conscious of time. It gave me a wider view into many things. It's very easy when making something to get trapped in the middle, to get caught on single point horizon line. To get caught on, this doesn't look like it's meant to look. It doesn't look as good as somebody else's. So when you add extra focal points, when you add extra angles, extra points within the field of view, it makes, say it with me now, a more dynamic image, a more complex image for sure. One which is harder to get to. But overall, how you use that viewpoint, vanishing point, focal point, angle, all those things throughout the process, not just in the image itself. All those things add up. And that, my friends, my comrades, my colleagues in creation, is how you create perspective. I said during this that there's no happy accidents. And I still believe that. There's no happy accidents. There is just distance from the incident. It's been a pleasure. I'll talk to you guys later.